Friends, I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, and so we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, we got to wait for the tubes to connect themselves. And my friends, I apologize if the hair is a little bit out of order today. We had a problem with the blow dryer. It blew up. My blow dryer blew up. So I got to get a new one. But we made do with what we had to do today. Are the tubes connected? It looks like they are. That's tremendous news. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we are talking about what's happening in New York. New York Engoron, aka Areola, aka the Nip, is now about to issue a verdict in the Tishy Latish trial. And we are taking a look at the two final reports that came in. We're going to take a look specifically at what the so-called monitor says the current status of the Trump organization is. And think of this like a sentencing. You know, before somebody gets sentenced at a criminal trial, the government comes back and they say, well, this is the problem with this defendant. He's going to reoffend. He's going to do this. He's going to do this. And they make their recommendation. The defense does the same thing, says my client's innocent and so on, or he's reformed. He's sorry. He's not going to reoffend. And so they send in their memos to the court. Same type of process is happening here. Two letters, one from the monitor, another one from Donald Trump, his response, all going to the Areola, aka the Nip, in the House, and he's going to be presumably reading these things before he issues a verdict any day now. And it could be a monster one. I mean, it really could be big. Something that hits the Trump organization to the tune of a couple $100 million, maybe 300 or 400 million. Basically the death of the business in New York, and there's a big business there. So we're going to go through this. There's also an article from the AP saying Trump is specifically being singled out here. It's kind of a wild article because they go through the history of this whole law that exists in New York, and they explain what a joke this prosecution is, right? Other types of civil proceedings that go after fraud are when people are actually being defrauded and nobody was even harmed in any of this stuff. It's just a political axe to grind. We've also got Alina Responds, who's going to be in the House, and so we'll listen to see what she says. Kind of a summary of all the Trump affairs that she is attending to on behalf of the former president. And so we're going to go through all of that and more. We've got some reading to do in the first segment. Then we're going to update ourselves on what else is happening in New York, because, you know, these two people, apparently, allegedly, they were working together. They were like colleagues, maybe even a mentor. We don't know what the story is, but this is Judge Kaplan. You know him from the judge who was screaming at Alina Responds, threatening her with jail for doing her job. He was presiding over the trial that gave Carroll $83 million. And the other person who is representing Carroll is this woman, Roberta Kaplan. Apparently, these two people actually worked together back in the mid-90s at the same law firm. Some people even saying she was a mentor or he was a mentor to her. And so there's a lot to unpack there. And of course, we'll do that. There is an article over from the NYPost that actually got a comment from Roberta Kaplan's representative who is confirming that, yeah, they did work together, but there was just a very small overlap, just like a year or two. You know, they didn't even talk to each other at the water cooler or anything like that. But they are confirming it out at the NYPost. And so we'll see what is inside there. Then we got a bunch of clips from man, and she is as crazy as we suspected here. She was over hitting the airwaves over the weekend, celebrating, doing their little victory lap. A lot of this stuff is kind of nauseating, actually. But we're going to go through a couple clips, couple short ones. One, Carroll. First thing she says, what are you going to do with her $80 million, She says, wow, I am going to do something that Trump hates. I'm like, wow, what a person, huh? Just a seething cauldron of hate. And we'll go through that. She also says, of course, that this is all about anything to stop Trump, which is what we've long suspected, given the fact that she was involved in the creation of the law that allowed this claim to proceed in New York to extend the statute of limitations. Her and her lawyer both confirmed that. So we'll listen to them. She's going to be working hard this election cycle, donating money to help other victims of sexual abuse and all the things. And so we'll hear what E. Jean Carroll has to say about that. Then we're going to hear from the Biden campaign chair. This guy is Senator Chris, what's his last name? Senator Chris Coons. That's right. Chris Coons reacts to the $83 million verdict. He was over on there with Jake Tapper. And so we'll see what he has to say about this. He's saying, well, you know, anything that takes out my political opponent is good for Joe Biden. And then we'll hear from a former Trump attorney named Tim Parlatore. We've heard from him before, but he showed up on CNN to explain what his take is on all of this lawfare. So all that's coming up in segment number 2. And then lastly, we're going to go through a court proceeding this happened Friday last week. And of course, we were dealing with the $83 million verdict there. But we're going to go through this because, Judge McAfee got Fani and her prosecutors to admit that there was collusion afoot out at the White House. And this is coming from the prosecutors' mouth themselves. We're going to hear from them. You can see this was Nathan Wade. He wasn't very involved in the proceeding, but he was there. He did show up. I don't see any flowers for Fani or anything. Maybe he dropped those off before he showed up in the courtroom. But my goodness, we're going to see that a prosecutor from Fulton County admits that, yeah, they got 2 letters from the Biden White House counsel's office. Biden's White House counsel, not the J6 committee, which will also be a problem, but from the why does Biden's White House and his lawyers need to know about whatever Fulton County is doing? No one knows. But the judge wants to know more. So we're going to go through the proceeding. We got about maybe 15, 20 minutes of it. It's pretty interesting because we hear a back and forth both sides of this. And then we'll hear from Representative Mike Collins, who is a representative out in Georgia. And so as you can see, my friends, we've got a lot to get to today. It's a beautiful Monday. We're glad that you are here and with us. I hope you had an amazing weekend. We did. We were busy. I had a conference that I was at, got to hang out with my brother Jojo, and we had a very great weekend together. I hope you had the same. This morning, we also had a great stream with our membos over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We talk about a lot of other things that we can't get to here. So we'd love it if you come and join us. We do streams in the morning. We do streams on Saturday, and it's a lot of fun. This morning, we talked about the 3 American soldiers who were killed in action. So rest in peace to them, prayers to their families and everybody in their orbit. And we talked about the border, the impeachment of Mayorkas. And so we talk about a lot of other things. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come check us out. We go through a lot of fun stuff. We've also got our website. So any of the PDFs that I'm about to share with you, if you want to go through them, you can find them right here. So after the show's over, give my team a little bit of time, and then they're going to repost the reports where all of the PDFs are uploaded. You can see we put everything here. We chronicle everything. We have our own PDF bank called Scribed where we store everything. And so, for example, here's an example of this. The full segment is available. We have a summary of the segment if you don't have time to watch the full thing. And then here are the red lines, all available, robertgovea.com. We've also got our shop. It's a great way to support the show and to look good while you're doing it. Grab yourself a hat and come read this hat. Come read what we wrote here about what this logo means. Lady Liberty, the unbalanced scales of justice. What does the sword mean? Like cutting through the bonds of ignorance. What does the shield mean? Something that we can all stand up for and get behind. So grab a hat, grab a shirt, robertgovea.com. Link is in the description below. All right, and now, without any further ado, let's get right to it, my friends, and get all this queued up because we're in New York today. Donald Trump slams Judge Engoron's final report. He got this from a monitor, an independent monitor that Judge Engoron, you may remember him as Areola, aka the Nip, seen here sitting next to his GF, his Greenfield, on the same level on the bench. I don't know what's happening under the bench there. But the point is, they have been colluding for quite some time, along with Tishy Tish James, to punish Donald Trump for daring to do business in the state of New York and for daring to be Trump. And so what happened, of course, is we've covered the full trial here. We're waiting for Judge Engoron to issue a ruling on this thing, like any day now, Judge. But what he has waited for are these final reports. This is a report from the New York Monitor. We're going to see her. She's a retired judge. She put together this kind of a short document. We'll hit the highlights. But then Trump turned around and blasted this thing. He says, you know, everything that you put in there is either inaccurate, it's irrelevant, or it's de minimis. It's minor. It's a clerical problem that doesn't account to anything. And so all this is going to go to the judge, and then he's going to make a decision about what to do, about whether Trump's entire business should be evaporated overnight in the state of New York. Now, Alina Abba is going to also come and explain some background in her take on this, but this was a wild story from the AP, republished by ABC News. Look at this. They admit the truth. They say taking away Trump's business empire would stand alone under New York fraud law. Oh, like almost like he's singled out. Yeah, this was written by this guy, Bernard Condon, over from the AP. So shout out to Bernard for actually doing some journalism and some research. He says from New York, within days, Donald Trump could potentially have his sprawling real estate business empire ordered dissolved, okay, by the NIP, Areola. He just says, well, you're a fraudulent person. Dissolved all of the millions and billions of dollars that Trump has created in new value for the state of New York. Some psycho judge, after being prosecuted by some psycho AG, are going to dissolve it because these people know nothing other than destruction. So they say it's going to be dissolved for so-called repeated misrepresentations on financial statements to lenders. Adding Trump to a very short list of scam marketers and con artists and others. Now, the AP, to their credit, they did an analysis of nearly 70 years of civil cases in New York. And the penalty, this dissolving, this dissolution, has only been imposed a dozen previous times. And let's see what some of these other people who had their businesses ripped away from them, what that was about. Now, Trump's case stands apart in a significant way. It's the only big business found that was threatened with a shutdown without showing any obvious victims or any other major losses. Isn't that weird? Nobody's even complaining other than Tish. Banks are happy, Trump's happy, no victims. Shut your business down. Now, lawyers for Tish in the Trump's month-long civil trial have ordered that the principles of fair play in business alone are enough to justify the harsh penalty. In other words, Trump got some good deals on loans. But some legal experts worry that if the judge goes out of his way to punish Trump, it could make it easier for courts to wipe out other companies in the future. Columbia, this guy said, this is basically the death penalty for a business. Is he getting his just desserts because of the fraud, so-called, or because people don't like him? So AP went back, they reviewed 150 reported cases for this repeated fraud statute that was passed back in 1956. And nearly every previous time that a company was taking away, victims and losses were key factors, except with Trump. Customers previously had lost money, they've bought defective products, they never received services that they ordered. They were actually cheated. They were actually angry. Businesses were also taken over almost always as a last resort. At the end of the line, they were trying to stop a fraud in progress, like the business was still committing the fraud. And it's to protect potential victims. We have no victims in this case, not one. They included a phony psychologist. Okay, so this is when they took this dude's business away. A fake psychologist sold dubious treatments. Okay, a fake lawyer sold false claims he could get students into law school. And businessmen who marketed financial advice, but instead swindled people out of their home deeds, right? Actual fraud. Now, in Trump's case, his company stopped sending exaggerated financial statements about the net worth years ago, but a court-appointed monitor noted that was only after he was sued. Now, although the bank offered Trump lower interest rates because he had agreed to personally guarantee the loan, it's not clear how much better the rates were because of the inflated figures. The banks never complained. And it's unclear how much it lost, if anything. Did the bank lose a dime? Bank officials called to testify couldn't say for sure if Trump's personal statement even had any impact on the rates. This dude is a real estate lawyer. He says this sets a horrible precedent. He says he once successfully sued Trump. Now, the question is about this dissolution. In an order last September that's currently on appeal, Engoron, Areola the NIP, said that Trump had indeed committed fraud and he should have his state certificates revoked. In other words, you can't do business anymore. Now, we don't know what he meant by dissolution, whether he's going to require liquidation, But this is wild. The AP analysis based on a search of these types of cases found victims and losses were factors in all of these other claims. For example, a breast cancer nonprofit was shut down years ago. They used $9 million of its donation to pay for director salaries. Yeah, they said, we're going to fund free mammograms, and they paid themselves. So they got shut down. Fraud. A private equity firm faking big investment successes was closed down. They literally stole millions of dollars. A mental health facility, they looted $4 million from public funds while they literally neglected patients. Now, there may be more, but legal experts say that these cases never show up in legal databases because they're settled or dropped. But the only case that the AP found of a business dissolved without citing actual victims or losses was a small company in 1972. They wrote term papers for college students, okay? The Attorney General said the victim was, quote, the integrity of the educational process. Now, this is not Trump's first run-in with the law. And of course, there's a lot going on here. We're waiting for the judge to issue a ruling on this. But Trump and his team has submitted their final response to the so-called independent monitor. And she is doing an analysis of the Trump organization. And she's going to say, Your Honor, Judge Engoron, before you issue your communist decision, please make sure you understand what I found when I did my independent review of Donald Trump. And here is what that looks like. You see, sent over to the Honorable Arthur Engoron, Supreme Court of the State of New York, People versus Donald Trump. It says, Dear Judge Engoron. And the woman who's writing this, you'll see down here, is a retired judge. Her name is Barbara S. Jones, retired. And we're going to fly through this. We'll just hit the highlights, and then we'll hear Trump's response because he's going to respond to a lot of it, so we don't need to read it twice. But here's the background. She says, okay, Judge Engoron. And she's been doing this for a long time, since November 14, 2022, okay, for a long time. Here says, I was appointed as the independent monitor, so-called, and I am required to report the status to the court. Now, to my date, my team has reviewed more than 3,000 documents. Lots of things. Financial disclosures, loans, documents about the structure and organization and entities, statements provided to Trump, taxes, transactions, and so on. Specifically, says this judge, I went through the Trump organization with a fine-tooth comb. We reviewed over 422 documents, 179 here, 200 bank statements, and blah. Now, they say, while the Trump organization, during this time of review, while they did not enter into any material loans or make significant real estate purchases, it submitted numerous financial statements, and I believe, Judge, that I have identified certain deficiencies in the financial information that I've reviewed. Now, while the Trump people, while they have been cooperative, information required to submit this has at times been lacking. So Trump is not letting them get everything that they wanted, according to this judge. Lacking in completeness and timeliness. And I have reviewed these items with Trump, and they've agreed to modify. So Trump is agreeing to modify their disclosures or to implement processes that improve accuracy, transparency, and the timeliness of their disclosures to some independent monitor who is appointed by a hack judge. Now, she says, my duties include the monitoring of a bunch of things and to comply with the orders. So Engoron orders Trump to give this stuff to them. They're obligated to provide to the monitor a full and accurate accounting of everything. And she says defendants are also required to give me all this stuff. Now, I'm very, special, she says. After my appointment, I met with a bunch of people. I will make independent inquiries, and this is the process. She tells us about the structure, about the purpose and the function. Now, of the 521 entities, which is a lot, 51 were dissolved, and they explain what's happening here. And let's get to her conclusions, and then we'll jump into Trump's response. But here are her observations, okay? She spent the first 7 pages explaining it. What's your point? Okay. As stated above, my role has been limited to assessing the accuracy of the information that Trump gave to me. During my review, I identified deficiencies. Here's what she says. Now, Trump is going to respond to all these and obliterate them, but just so we see, I've identified instances where certain disclosures are either incomplete or demonstrate a lack of transparency, whatever that means. this is not a normal thing to have an independent monitor just demanding access to certain things, and you say, I don't think I should give you that. Now, or I'm obligated under the court order to give you that. She says it's a lack of transparency, like they're lying or hiding something. I don't think that's accurate or fair. She might say I'm entitled to that, and Trump might say I'm not entitled to that, right? Just because we're talking about numbers and financial records and financial statements, I think a lot of people have a tendency to think that it's just numbers and it's all facts because it's numbers and it's math, right? Like it's just a spreadsheet. Everything has to calculate together and sum up right. But no, there's as much discretion in this stuff as anything. Yeah, that's not required to be categorized that way. I don't have to disclose that to you. This doesn't go on that form. This goes on that form. I don't put this on any form. This guy says put it on that form. He says put it on that form. They say put it on that form. So I'm going to put it on all the forms. You know, whatever. Like that's just why we have generally accepted accounting principles, right? The GAAP stuff. And there's a lot of different interpretation for this, just like there is in the law with words. We can debate over the words, and the words are what tells you to put the things where. The words say put this here or put this there, but if the words aren't clear, you don't know what to do. So anyways, she says certain loan agreements require Trump to provide accuracy statements and so on. We identified 10 instances where the lender required this, but it was incomplete, right? So Trump didn't give him an updated report on this. Or certain loan agreements require disclosures. We've observed that some of the contingent liabilities have not been included in the documents. They forgot a term or something. Inconsistent disclosures. Expenses related to management fees were inconsistently presented within the annual budgets prepared and submitted for the lender. Yeah, maybe somebody who prepared the budget one year decided to put it in, the other didn't, right? So it's inconsistent. And there were also errors. The calculated amount of EBITDA was different. So there was a difference of 1.58 million there. 14. So that's kind of a big number, right? She puts that near the top. 1.16 million. But some of these are other kind of small. An understatement by 14,000. An understatement by 130, whatever that is. We got in 2022 Doral audited financial statements and other things. Okay, so here's the final category, interactions with the monitor. Then we're going to jump into the Trump stuff. She says, as described, Trump failed to inform me of tax returns that had been filed for certain entities, and I was also not informed of cash transfers that were sent to Trump, each exceeding 5 million or more, until my team reviewed the accounts, so moving big money around. The Trump organization did not inform me of financial disclosures. And as mentioned above, the Trump organization sold its right to operate Ferry Point. And I did not receive this information until later, right? So she's upset I'm not getting the documents immediately. And so, in conclusion, this is what she writes. Following the work my team completed, the above set forth my findings. It is important to note that Trump acknowledged the disclosure issues described that I brought in, and they're open to recommendations to improve accuracy and transparency. Like, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we should tighten that up. Great. Indeed, during the monitorship, the Trump organization has actually already implemented changes, several of which are described above. In addition, with respect to instances where required disclosures were not provided, they submitted information when it was made aware of the omissions. So in other words, they did everything. They're like, okay, sure, that's a great idea. We'll do that, whatever. Now, does that mean the entire business should be dissolved? And by the way, if you went into any business, okay, even yours, they're going to find financial problems always, right? Oh, you know, why is this going on here? Is this not categorized the right way? Whatever it is. Because that's the point, right? Nobody bats 100% all the time in anything. So absent steps, if you're going to get an audit, they're going to find something. So absent steps to address the items above my observations, she suggests that misstatements and errors may continue to occur. And that could result in an incorrect or inaccurate reporting. And that's kind of the big problem. Could result in incorrect or reporting of financial information to third parties. And so the parties continue to cooperate with me under the requirements. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Now, Trump says, okay, Barbara, judge, retired. Maybe if you weren't grifting millions of dollars off of us since you've been a so-called independent monitor since 2022, we'd have a little bit more belief in your report, but you're not. Trump's team responds. They send this back over to Arthur Engoron, aka the NIP. They say, Dear Judge Engoron, Areola, as you're aware, we represent the defense. We have something to say about this report. Now, the January 26th report, the one that we just read, issued mere days, we're waiting for a verdict, a decision any minute, has only two obvious purposes. To ensure that the monitor, Barbara, continues to receive exorbitant fees. Right now, she's got $2.6 million to date. Oh my gosh. That's a lot of money. So she's like doing all these audits and she's like, wow, yeah, I've noticed in your financial statement, you don't have my $2.6 million check. You better get that real quickly. I'm like, here. Now, Trump says, two, in addition to her grifting away, they are also filling the gaping hole in Letitia's case. Not in the seat where she's been sitting for the last 6 weeks, which they're probably also going to have to repair that hole too on the bench as well. But in her case, not the courtroom pew. Now, namely, that there is no basis to support continued oversight. Get this monitor out of here. The January 26th report also contains numerous factual inaccuracies that even cast doubt on her competency. So whatever we read means maybe she's just a moron. She's a judge, by the way, right? Maybe not an accounting or financial judge, who knows. It also fails to reference governing standards of any kind, and it's misleading and disingenuous. Now, despite having reviewed thousands of pages of financial data relative to more than 400 entities and having paid millions of dollars for her so-called, quote, oversight, the monitor only points to minor and immaterial discrepancies and simple math errors. For example, millions paid so that the monitor can, quote, uncover 7 immaterial disclosure items that are irrelevant, right? That disclosure list. 3 irrelevant inconsistencies, don't even matter. And 5 clerical errors that nobody cares about. Now, moreover, the monitor issued 5 prior reports specifically advising the court and Trump and the org ongoing cooperation and compliance. Now, right? So in other words, they were saying ongoing cooperation and compliance 5 times before. Trump is cooperating. Trump is cooperative. They're complying. But now, in obvious and bad faith effort to manipulate the innocuous accounting items into a narrative favoring her continued receipt of millions in excessive fees, now Barbara rehashes long resolved issues and, quote, for the first time, includes the unabashedly self-serving statements that, quote, my observations suggest that misstatements and errors may continue to occur. Now, Trump entities cannot legitimately be held to a strict liability standard wherein immaterial inaccuracies or math errors form the basis for this ongoing oversight. Millions. Now, further oversight is unwarranted and will only unjustly enrich the monitor as she engages in some Javert-like quest against the defendant. And apparently this is from Les Miserables or something like that. I'm not French. The monitor was appointed to report any financial reporting misconduct, suspicious activity, and fraudulent activity. But not this. The monitor was not appointed to identify math errors or otherwise sensationalize minor and inconsequential accounting discrepancies scattered throughout the financial reports of over 400 companies. And that's it. That's what she got. She got like that. It's 12 pages, and half of the document is her whining or explaining herself. Okay, okay, here. This is page 1, just so you can follow along. This is page 1. Explanation, things I looked at, how my team works, my review process, great. The structure of the Trump work, okay, got that. Financial statements issued to third parties. And then we finally get to her observations right here, right on page 7. And then she gets into it. So like 5 pages. And the concluding page is, let's see where that is. Okay, it's a full page. So it's got 5 pages. That's it for 400 companies? Wow. $2 million bucks. Amazing. So pursuant to her appointment, the monitor submitted reports, all these back, all this one, December 19th, February 3rd, April 11th, August 3rd, November 29th, blah, blah. There is no mention whatsoever of any misconduct. Indeed, the words misconduct, suspicious activity, suspected fraud, or actual fraud do not appear in the report at all. She's just looking at spreadsheets. Now, instead, ignoring the letter and the spirit of her mandate, the report just rehashes resolved issues we already dealt with, and it also demonstrates fully that the only items that she has been able to identify in exchange for her $2.6 million are a handful of immaterial and irrelevant discrepancies and math errors. The fact that Trump and the organization have been forced to pay millions for a process which reveals there are no issues, there is no misconduct, there is no fraud, is truly shocking. The fraud is $2.6 million being grifted away out of the Trump org. Now, the Monitor wants to continue to perpetuate this. Now, until now, each of the 5 prior reports expressly recognizing that Trump has complied and that they have been cooperative. Here, they say, look, here you go, Judge. Ongoing cooperation. We appreciate this. Continuing to comply. I appreciate the ongoing cooperation. I appreciate the ongoing cooperation. I appreciate the parties' cooperation. And they continue to cooperate. But now she twists everything. The January 26th report, for the first time, now says that misstatements and errors may continue to occur. This is disingenuous. Now, they say also, Trump are simply not legitimately subject to this standard. The largest dollar item identified relates to the payment of taxes, fully and obviously disclosed in the bank statements, and it's not concealing anything. So it's not incomplete at all. In other words, all this stuff you can get elsewhere. In sum, the only possible purpose in this post-trial collective of immaterial items, why are they gobbling all this up and sending it to the judge? They're just going to bolster her disingenuous and self-interested efforts to frame Trump in a false light. These are discrepancies. These are framed out of context. And this was a detailed and expensive oversight inquiry, and this is all they found. Now, here are the purported incomplete disclosures. They go through one at a time. They say that this was not disclosed. That's not true, though. They say the court and the Monitor are aware of this, that we don't do this anymore. The SOFC is no longer prepared. We don't even do this thing. Instead, the Trump entities prepared the MAML, which includes the material debt. That has already been provided by Trump to certain lenders. No lender has raised an objection to getting this. Each lender has accepted it without incident. So this is a non-issue. She's like, where's this report? They're like, we don't do that. We already told you. The Monitor also says this statement, now, blah, blah, blah. This statement is also misleading. The alleged, quote, defect here is that a handful of the certifications did not include a manual signature line. Okay. There was no manual signature line on the certifications. That's an omission of no consequence. Not a single lender raised any issue or requested a manual signature. Well, it needs to be an ink signature. Wow. A handful of them didn't have it, and nobody's ever complained. And she's like, well, there you go. Illegal. Take your whole business away. The Monitor is not entitled to collect millions in fees, so she can substitute her judgment for an actual lender who accepts it. This is another non-issue and does not support her oversight. $2.6 million to say, can you please correct your signature line? Also talking about intercompany loans. But her deliberate mischaracterization casts further doubt on her competency and her veracity. It's another non-issue. The Trump entities, of course, never said the loan did not exist. We just gave her a memo saying that there are no liabilities. Now, the fact that she couldn't put one and one together is her problem. Saying the Monitor has not disputed any of these facts, and it's another non-issue. So you see how this is working. Going through every single one and pointing out that this person is just not doing a qualified job. Here are some of the errors that they're finding. The Monitor states that management fees were erroneously excluded, but this statement lacks context. Fails to acknowledge the fact that the amount in question falls well below their own materiality threshold. Trump has already responded. In other words, this was simply a clerical error that was caused by cutting and pasting from an Excel file. That's it. She's auditing their Excel spreadsheets for millions of dollars. Now, the underlying income and the expense line items shown on the schedule are always properly disclosed and correct. Minor clerical errors do not support continued oversight. Again, another minor error on this one. And it's the same story as we go through. Now, they talk about interactions with the monitor. They say that the Trump organization, she says, they failed to inform me of their tax returns. But they say, well, the monitor, Barbara, she asked for the status of the appraisal in November. And we responded immediately by uploading it to her ShareFile site. So as soon as she asked, she got it, Judge. And similarly, the monitor acknowledged the ambiguity. And she knows that the transfers that she had questions about were for payment of taxes because they were fully disclosed in the bank statements that were provided to the monitor by the defendants. So in other words, she's saying, I don't see stuff. She says, I was not informed of the cash transfers, right? Judge, they didn't tell us about $5 million going to Donald Trump. Trump got 40 million bucks moved in $5 million increments. They didn't tell me about that. They say this is totally misleading. The Trump entities discussed this with her on November 28th. And the materiality threshold only required telling her this stuff anyways. But we acknowledge this ambiguity, and she knows because it was in the bank statements. Like we gave her the bank statement saying, hey, here's the money moving around. So they say that this is appalling disingenuity. She is being disingenuous because she had the records and I didn't see any of this. She's also upset she didn't get these records. And they told her specifically, Trump entities expressly informed her, quote, there were no financial disclosures of any kind provided to the insurance broker. This was affirmed in writing. We shared it with you. Okay, so she's just kind of picking and choosing, and you can see how this concludes. Now, as noted, Judge Engoron, Areola the Nip, Barbara has thus far been paid, check this out, $2.6 million in the past 14 months. 14 months, $2.4 million. That's nice, man. It's nice work if you can get it. How do you become a monitor in a corrupt, broken city for corrupt partisan hacks? How do you do that? You can get paid $2.6 million if you can get that job. To uncover, quote, 7 immaterial disclosure items that no one cares about, irrelevant inconsistencies, and 5 clerical errors that she found in spreadsheets. Now, after representing that Trump was fully cooperative and compliant this entire time, now she desperately, Barbara, seeks to justify the continued receipt of millions of dollars in fees going forward. And so, setting aside her self-serving hyperbole, the monitor, Barbara's own findings simply do not support or provide any evidentiary basis for continued oversight. Indeed, the monitor did not identify any financial reporting misconduct, suspicious activity, or any suspected or even actual fraud. All of her conclusions are based on subjective determinations devoid of any standards or considerations of any established frameworks or rules. And she doesn't identify that any of these deficiencies were even material. And so, moreover, Barbara herself acknowledges that the minor issues she has identified could be remediated with an effective process for review and, quote, training. Methods far less expensive and less intrusive than continuing, ongoing, and pointless oversight by Barb. The court, therefore, must and should end this abusive and costly process. Should the court have any questions? Areola, let us know. Signed by Clifford Robert on behalf of the Trump org. And what they're attaching here in the rest of these exhibits, as you can see, these will be available at robertgovea.com, is all of the other letters, right? So, hey, dear Judge Engoron, on December 19th, she wrote a different thing. And she says, back in here, that everybody's very cooperative. She said, in the prior order, defendants are complying with the terms of the order, and I appreciate their ongoing cooperation, right? Honorable Barbara Jones, retired. All sent over to Judge Engoron. And now, as you can see, we're waiting for a ruling from Judge Engoron, a decision. What's he going to do when this all comes out? And so let's get into that when it does. Of course, before we exit, we got to make sure we hear from Alina Abba, who's in the House, and she's explaining that they're going to be appealing this. They're not waiting around. They need to appeal this based on conflicts of interest in the E. Jean Carroll case. But here is what Abba says in a summary of what the Trump cases look like currently.
On the federal front, it seems that the trial timeline is aligning very closely with the primary elections.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on there?
Shocking. Isn't it shocking? It's shocking that he's going to be tied up in court. You know, it's like what I said before. They can't beat him. So they have to use, corrupt methods, lie, cheat, and steal. And part of that is tying him up in court so that he can't be out in Iowa and he can't be out where he needs to be campaigning. Whether they win or lose, they don't care. They've already, in their minds, done what they've wanted. And I think they would go so far as to try and put him in jail if they could. And it's a very frightening time. It's motivating the Republican Party, but it's a frightening time. And we'll just take each one head on.
For my final question, if there's one just overall important thing that you would like people to understand about what's going on here in a nutshell, what would that be?
The president has done nothing wrong in these cases. I know these cases. This is absolutely what he would call a witch hunt, but more importantly, election interference. So we have to overcome that. We have to get out and vote, and don't let it waver your faith. He's tremendous, and he'll get back in and clean it all up.
All right, so that is Alina Abba, and we have another clip from her saying that they are scared of Trump. Let's listen to this.
As President Trump's lawyer, you and your team have been facing relentless left-wing lawfare, 91 charges in 4 separate cases. How do you guys remain relentless in the face of all that?
Motivated to save the country. I think that has a big part of it. Lawfare is a real thing. We're seeing it. They can't stop him with the votes, so they're trying to find other ways and get creative, and they've used the justice system, unfortunately, to do so. So, we're motivated. We have a great team.
Alina. This is a family show. Someone's going to have to get me an ice pack.
And the facts are on our side. The law is on our side. The problem is that we have corruption, and politics permeating our judicial system. So as long as we can get some people who really put their robes on and take it seriously and get rid of some of the corruption in these, Soros backing AGs and DAs, will be okay.
What is your message to people who might be saying, I'm just so sick of all this that's going on and I just want it all to go away?
Well, we have to fight. You can't expect things to just go away. If you care about the Constitution, if you care about the country, get up and vote. That's what individuals can do. Don't think that, your state's red, so you don't have to go vote. You got to get up, you got to vote, you got to do your part. So it's very important, and I think that they should, don't despair. We only have a little bit more time left. So everybody, if anything, we've got to get charged up.
That's right.
It's, November's around the corner, and
That's right.
I'm looking forward to seeing President Trump win.
When it comes to the civil fraud case in New York, several legal experts like Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Saul Weisberg, they've all, they've said that this is obviously a political prosecution.
Yep.
What kind of precedent does that set, and what kind of implications for the republic is that?
Very dangerous for New York, the state of New York. They used a consumer fraud statute, and they used it in a private business. They went into contracts where no one was harmed. They went in, there's no victim. Everybody made money. They made money quickly. Loans were paid off. They were never in default. They're trying to get rid of the Trump organization to hurt financially the leading candidate of the Republican Party. So if you're in the state of New York, honestly, you should be very concerned. We're seeing Letitia James, who ran on getting Trump, get Trump. That's a problem. That's not the way this works. You don't get to say you're going to go into office, and this was her quote, go into office, get Trump, and go home. You can't do that. It's un-American. It's not the way AGs are supposed to operate. They're supposed to protect the city. And meanwhile, the state of New York is falling apart. Crime is rampant. So it's very destructive. I think for the state of New York, for businesses, small businesses, private businesses, this will set a very dangerous precedent.
She's right about that. And I do appreciate her saying that we do need to be charged up. A lot of these things, and I'm sure you can feel it too, they can be very deflating when you hear people, as we'll talk about in the next segment here, like E. Jean Carroll and others doing victory laps, doing cartwheels every time they have a new little battle victory. It becomes an energetic deflation in many areas. And of course, that is the intention, right? They're trying to beat their enemies. They're trying to diminish the energy levels of the other side. And we're not going to let that happen. We're going to keep exposing these people for who they are, because they can't do this stuff fair and square. They've got to have two judges. They've got to use bizarre laws in new ways that have never been applied in these instances. They have to bring cases where there's no victims, right? They can't beat Trump fair and square. They know he's got the entire large part of this country at his back. And it is now break glass in case of emergency. Pull out all the stops to make sure that he cannot win. Go after his businesses. Go after his family, his kids here in these businesses, the organization that has built literal buildings in New York, saying you guys just have to just go away now because you are Trump. You are not part of Tishy's vision for America. And so we're going to be here continuing to cover this, my friends. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. If you want to grab the PDFs that we went through on this segment, they're available at robertgovea.com. Grab the shop. Stop by the shop while you're over there to grab a hat, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one. All right, my friends. So let's carry on. Whew. All right, and we've got segment number 2 in the House. And if that Alina Abba segment was, increasing energy levels, don't worry. We've got E. Jean Carroll coming back up, and that's going to decrease them immediately. And we're going to start right back up on segment number 2. E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, apparently had a very nice relationship with Judge Kaplan in the Southern District of New York. They worked together as colleagues back in the mid-90s. This is according to a report from the NYPost and elsewhere. Roberta Kaplan's attorney representative even responded confirming this. And so we're going to see what E. Jean Carroll has to say on the heels of her $83 million verdict, which is going to be appealed, and on one basis, in fact, a conflict of interest between E. Jean Carroll and her lawyer and Judge Kaplan. So this is the story over from the NYPost, and here is what they tell us, that Trump's lawyers, Alina and others, are going to use this conflict of interest to appeal this because there's a very serious conflict that exists, saying that there was a previously unknown conflict of interest between Roberta Kaplan, which is E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, and Judge Kaplan, where we had the $83 million verdict. Alina said she was unaware that Lewis Kaplan and Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, actually worked together in the early 1990s. They were at the same powerhouse white shoe law firm, and then she learned about this on Saturday when the Post, a columnist called Charles Gasparino, who was told by a source that the judge was once Roberta Kaplan's mentor. Amazing. The judge, and they have the same last name, but apparently they're not related. But he was her mentor, according to this source. Now, it was never disclosed, Abba said. It's insane and so incestuous, insisting that neither the 79-year-old judge nor Roberta, who aren't related, disclosed the conflict of interest. She says that's a judicial ethics problem in New York. Roberta Kaplan, E. Jean's lawyer, worked at Paul Weiss Rifkin, Wharton and Garrison. That was in Midtown, 1992 to 2016. She was there for quite some time. Then she became a founding partner at her own law firm, Kaplan, Heckler, and Fink. That's according to her own bio page. So that's Roberta's bio. Now, Alina said, this is news to us. We're going to include this in our appeal, and we're going to take appropriate measures. The fact it wasn't disclosed is an ethics violation. Now, during her early years at Paul Weiss, Roberta Kaplan, E. Jean's lawyer, she worked as an associate of the firm at the same time as Judge Kaplan, who was a partner there until 1994 when he was appointed to the bench by Bill. So Zach Sawyer, a representative for Roberta Kaplan, responded. Okay, so Kaplan's people responded. He said, quote, They overlapped for less than 2 years in the early 90s at a large law firm when he was a senior partner and she was a junior associate, and she never worked for him. So there's a lot of lawyer language in there. Okay, senior partner, that's great. You might be someone who is senior. You often work with juniors. Happens all the time. They shadow you. Okay, come with me to this hearing. Come with me to this meeting. Sit in with me on this phone call. In fact, the idea that they're not at the same status means that they probably had a higher propensity to work together. Okay, two senior partners aren't going to work with each other in a lot of things. Maybe they work on a big case. A couple of them work together, team up on a big case. But more likely, what I think you'd see is a senior partner working with a junior associate to show them, hey, junior associate, work on this motion, right? I would do that all the time. Here, work on this, work on this, work on this. You bring me that, you bring me that, you bring me that. And then I'll grade those, right? I'll review those, red line those up, give them back. Okay, we'll give them back and talk through them. And then the junior person who would actually work on the motion, so let's say I handed something off to Roberta Kaplan, I would bring her to come with me while we argued it. Okay, hey, you did this work, let's go do this together. And that a senior and a junior work together. So that makes total sense that they would be working together, especially if the source said that she was a mentor or that Judge Kaplan was a mentor to Robbie Kaplan. But she never worked for him. Okay, so what? That doesn't matter. They may still have a personal relationship there. And if it's less than 2 years, that's a lot of time. You can really get to know someone pretty well there. But a former Paul Weiss partner who asked not to be named said all associates at the firm, like all associates, Roberta did her best to distinguish herself before her partners, obviously, right? Which included Lewis Kaplan. The former partner, also at the firm, who's being anonymous, says the judge, Lewis Kaplan, was like her mentor. Isn't that disgusting? So a former partner to the firm said Lewis Kaplan was like Roberta Kaplan's mentor. Amazing, right? Yeah, and they probably share a last name, so they're like, oh, the Kaplan crew, oh, the Kaplans, ha ha ha, running around together. A special affinity, since they're not related. Now, messages left with Judge Kaplan's chambers obviously were not responded to, and a representative for Paul Weiss were not returned on Saturday. There's E. Jean. Now, Trump was previously ordered to pay her $5 million, and remember, it was just a couple million for the actual assault, for the grab him by the purse situation, the old DJ Diddles, error. You know, you're in a situation like that, and they find that she was entitled to two or 3 million for that. Actually, I think it was 2 million for that, and then 3 million for the defamation. So in other words, you can DJ diddle a woman against her will, in a Bergdorf's dressing room. And that's bad enough. But if you say something bad about her, that's much worse, according to the New York jury. 3 million for talking badly about a woman, calling her a liar, and only 2 million for the actual assault. I don't know. That's New York. But after that, then 83 million on top of that. So the DJ diddle is nothing even remotely close to the other defamation that resulted in 83 million or something. All right, anyways, so the jury found that Trump was liable for slandering her, for calling her a whack job. There's Alina again. Now, Trump said, all this is absolutely ridiculous. We're going to be appealing this. No doubt about it. This is a witch hunt. Our legal system is out of control, and it's being used as a political weapon. And so we're going to see some reaction from E. Jean. She was out there hitting the media airwaves, doing her little victory party, but she is revealing everything that we already thought. First of all, that she's not well in the head, in my opinion. And number two, that she is a political tool that is being exploited by political actors. Remember, the person who told her to sue or introduced her to Roberta Kaplan was George Conway. And George Conway is a rabid anti-Trumper. I don't know, maybe because his ex-wife likes Trump better than him. I don't know why, but he's very upset. And so he makes it his mission, waking up every day to go out there and do something about Trump. Just look at his X timeline. You can judge for yourself and see. It's like a mission. And they were at a party with Molly Jongfest, another TDS person, and they were apparently hanging out with E. Jean Carroll, who admitted at her trial that she went to 6 or so Trump prosecution parties. Wild. all orchestrated by lefties, by anti-Trumpers. And they call this Justice in America. But all right, this is E. Jean. Now, she showed up on this show, and she was talking about this, saying, what are you going to do with the $83 million? And here is Roberta Kaplan just licking her lips, salivating over that money. And my question still is, did George Conway get a referral fee on that $83 million? Did George Conway get splits on it for passing the referral off to Roberta? Don't know. We'll have to see. But this is what E. Jean said when she was doing her rounds.
The elation was so great on Friday. It filled me up. It was almost painful. It's taken really every day. Today, I'm just very happy because I'm calm enough to realize what she did.
It's been reported the exchange smiles with the jurors on the way out. Is that true?
Yes.
What was that like?
Nice question, George Stephanopoulos. Did you smile at the jurors? Gosh, he's just as bad as all of them.
Well, it was very moving. It made me burst into tears because they met my eyes for the first time. It's very moving.
You said you want to do great things with this $83 million settlement. Give us an idea about that.
Don't want to waste money. Well, I do have an idea. I'd like to give the money to something Donald Trump hates.
Nice.
If it will cause him pain for me to give money to certain things, that's my intent.
What a nice lady, huh? What a person with a nice heart out there that just wants to recover, you know? You think that you've been tragically abused. You just want to recover. You just want to move on. You just want compensation. You want the worst ordeal of your life to be put behind you so you can get back on track, right? Or is it you're just now a political tool that is going to be used by the Democrats to go out there and continue this gigantic facade of being a victim of abuse?
Well, perhaps a fund for the women who have been sexually assaulted by Donald Trump.
Yeah. Notice.
Are you confident?
Yeah, notice how she changed that word. Remember she used to say the R word? She doesn't say that anymore. Isn't that curious? I was R'd by Trump. No, you were not. The jury found that you were not. A judge twisted himself into a pretzel to say, well, there was digital penetration, and so I think that's R and that's R. Close enough kind of a thing. But no. Why did they disambiguate the two charges? An assault charge is not R. That's why they're separate. So the judge kind of made them the same, but they're not. Now, she's not using that because the jury found that she was not credible. In my opinion, the jury said she's lying about that. Lying about being R'd. They said no. They checked the box. No. Judge didn't tell the new jury about that. The judge didn't say anything about her credibility being lacking as to that charge. All of it was forgotten about. And she changed it because Roberta Kaplan says, actually, no, he didn't R you, according to the jury verdict. So even she's given her a little bit of guidance on that. Change your language. And did you notice her body language? Watch Roberta here as she says that. I kind of noticed something. Yeah, kind of felt like she was like, maybe I don't like that answer a whole lot. Because it's not supposed to be about vindictiveness. Is she a victim or is she a political tool? Somebody who is now on a war against Trump. It kind of feels like she's been on a war against Trump the entire time because she's not well in the head. Now, we've got more from her. This is where she makes it fully known that she's going to be doing anything that she can to stop Trump, which I guess is going to be continuing this facade. Here is what Tom S. Elliott clipped over for us on the X platform. And this is E. Jean making the waves.
You've said that when you've actually faced the man, he's just a man with no clothes on.
Yeah.
It's the people around him that are giving him the power. What do you mean by that?
Well, Hans Christian Andersen's great fairy tale, The Emperor Has No Clothes, that is written about Donald Trump. It's just, we're the ones who clothe him in all this power. He has none himself. It's his followers. It's his hangers-on. In the court, they were strutting back and forth and handing him messages. It was, right, Robbie?
Ms. Carroll, you say nothing. You say the emperor has no clothes. The emperor is trying to run for president again.
And right now is leading.
And right now, the polls suggest it's a coin flip. It's very close.
Yeah, good.
Have you heard
from
Joe Biden's campaign arm about potentially campaigning against the former president, Donald Trump?
No.
Are you interested in doing so?
Do anything I can.
That's a yes. Yeah.
What was it?
Do anything I can. Now, you could say, well, if a victim of abuse got actually victimized, you might say, yeah, you want to do everything you can to keep him out of power. And I can understand that, but I can also understand our perspective on this. This is a 30-plus-year-old case, and we have a lot of questions about the integrity of the proceedings here, all preponderance of the evidence, and the court kept out a ton of evidence about how this woman actually thinks and what her history actually looks like. That could have been very useful to the jury if they would have seen it. But no, they're going to get her, this is the goal, get her labeled, get a big fat whopping verdict from a New York jury, and then use that label throughout the rest of the election. Okay, now she's going to be all over the place. We're going to be E. Jean Carroll to death after this woman makes the waves in 2024, which of course she will. Now the Biden people are pretty happy about this. Every time Trump gets hit, for some reason they think it benefits them. To me, it feels like they're biting off a little bit more they can chew. Jake Tapper poses the same question. He says, you know, to Senator Chris Coons, he is apparently the Biden campaign co-chair, so he's working hand in hand with Joe. He says, you know, the juries are coming out and they're hitting Trump. Are people going to be real happy with the fact that this dude who actually built buildings in New York is going to be hit with an $83 million verdict for a defamation claim? Defamation for a unwell woman from a claim that's almost 30 years ago, which has no witnesses, and she had a hard time remembering the date?
Over the course of the campaign as a political matter, we have seen how legal cases against Donald Trump boost his support. Ron DeSantis, before he dropped out, expressed dismay that all the court cases happened. He seemed to be suggesting that maybe he would have had more traction if the Republican body politic hadn't rallied around him because of all these cases. Are you at all concerned that that might have a similar effect with independent voters or people who are trying to decide between Trump and Biden? They might see this as all unfair.
Well, Jake, that is certainly what seems to be the response of the deep believers, the true core MAGA crowd, that they buy what Donald Trump is selling, that this is all just a witch hunt, and that somehow...
We don't buy what you're selling, my man. The burden is on you guys to prove your claims, and we don't buy what you're selling. Trump is just defending himself. You guys are the ones who are initiating the 4 indictments, the ballot removals, the Tishy-Lay-Tish prosecutions, and on.
In going after him for his misconduct, they're really going after his core supporters. But the results of the recent New Hampshire primary suggest that there's a lot of independents and persuadable Republicans who preferred Nikki Haley over Donald Trump for exactly this sort of reason, and who in exit polls said that if Trump is convicted in a court of law on any of the many charges that he faces, that will contribute to this critical, persuadable group concluding that he's unfit to serve as president.
So that's the goal, right? They want the courts to cause some people to come to a conclusion. Like the DOJ still has enough credibility that some independents in America are going to go, oh, well, see, Trump has been indicted. He's got 90-something felonies. Is anybody going to care anymore by the time this all hits? I'm not so sure. Here is Tim Parlatore, a former Trump attorney who is joining CNN to talk about some of this. And here's the question from Caitlin.
Carroll, do you believe he accepts this?
You know, I don't. I mean, obviously, by standing up and walking out in the middle of it, I think he was kind of making his opinion known. But, you know, both of these trials, they came to results that he certainly doesn't like. I think that they probably are, you know, could have turned out differently, perhaps. But no, I don't think he's going to accept it.
I mean, you represented him. How do you think he is reacting tonight to an $83.3 million verdict from a jury, not from a judge or Democrat?
A great question there, Caitlin. He's very happy. He's having a nice steak dinner tonight.
Or President Biden, whatever he says. This is from a jury.
A jury that was rigged. He had no defense he could present at all. The judge didn't let him say or do anything. In fact, when he was going to testify, the judge was basically checking Alina's questions and checking his answers. This was not a trial.
It is, and the crazy thing that he's probably thinking about is they awarded $5 million, for the actual alleged assault, or when they found the assault,
the DJ diddles,
and then several magnitudes more for talking about it. So I think that's probably something that's probably going through his head.
Yeah, Caitlin, are you rectifying those two bizarre situations?
Right now is the kind of disparity between the first verdict and the second verdict. And when you listen to some of the things Alina Responds says about how they were stripped of the defenses, I mean, that's right, because of the first trial. Had they had a different verdict in the first trial, they might have had a different set of circumstances for the second trial. But once you've tried a case, you're stuck with that conclusion.
It was the same. It was the same limitations in the first trial, which we covered here.
Court that she didn't regret representing Trump, but I mean, do you both of them? Do you think it's the other way around, that he regrets having represented him in this?
I'm glad you asked me that question.
I don't know. I mean, certainly, from my perspective, I would regret having her represent him. I mean, I do think that in both of these trials, he was essentially undefended. And I think that it could have turned out differently. I mean, in the second trial, unfortunately, because of the way the first trial went, I don't think anybody could have won the second trial.
Yeah.
I think that, once the issues were set up from the first trial, second trial was a loser from the beginning. The question is, how big of a loser? And this goes back to, a jury is going to come up with a number. And you have to put on the best presentation to them to get them to come to a lower number. And so all of these, things that she did throughout the process.
Is there anything she could have done
at all?
Well, what about him?
And that's also a matter of, in the courtroom, the attorney is the one who should be telling the client, how to act, what to be doing, and everything else.
All right, I get so tired of these people acting like this is a real court where there is an actual legitimate process happening. We're watching Judge Kaplan hanging out with his prior mentee, Roberta. He's like, hey, good to see you again. How's your practice going? Oh, yeah, you're here against Trump. Good. I hate him, too. It's a sham. It's not anything that resembles actual justice. And so for these two people to play patty cake over it, like, well, acting like it's a real game, it's not. This is, my friends, something that is going to continue to happen, carry forward. We are going to be waiting for Trump's appeal. Alina Responds said that the appeal will be coming soon, and we'll be looking forward to see what that looks like as we cover it and carry on. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching us. Thank you for joining us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is our members-only community. We do after parties there. We do morning streams where we stream 6 days a week in the mornings, including on Saturdays. We talk about a lot of other fun stuff, so come check us out. Links are in the description below. And my friends, we're going to be here covering the appeals, the rest of the Trump sagas in New York, out of the Southern District, out of Engoron's courtroom. We hope you join us as we do. We'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, let's get in to the final segment on the day, and we're going over to Georgia. Fani Willis and her prosecutors in Georgia now admit that they colluded with the White House counsel. We're going to go through this hearing, which took place in Scott McAfee's courtroom. The judge was listening to arguments related to Jeffrey Clark, a co-defendant in the RICO case, and he is saying, we want motions to compel the government, Fani Willis and Nathan Wade. You see him there walking into the courtroom with his water bottle sitting down. No Fani around him, but saying that they have information that they need to give over to the defense, that they need to see it. One of those items are apparently letters from the White House counsel. And you might be saying, well, Rob, aren't they communicating with the feds? Well, maybe they were communicating with the January 6th committee, which would be a problem in and of itself because they're supposed to be doing their investigation on their own. They're not supposed to be copying and pasting Liz Cheney's homework, but we know Nathan Wade doesn't have a good history of taking notes or doing his due diligence, so he probably did just take her homework and just copied it. But the point is, they're not supposed to be doing that. It's supposed to be an independent investigation from Georgia with their grand jury and all the things. But why would they also be talking to the White House counsel? That's Joe Biden's office. That's the White House. That's a political entity. Why are they getting letters from them? Well, let's see if we can break it down. This is the hearing that took place out of Scott McAfee's courtroom. Took place on a Friday. Now, the first part of this hearing includes a conversation about another issue. And so we're jumping into this right kind of after the first issue has already been dealt with. And the judge is going to carry this over into this argument about whether Fani's office should be compelled to disclose information to the defense. And so this guy up at the bench right here is the lawyer for the defense. You can see here, this is the prosecutor's table, which we're going to hear from another prosecutor who is not Nathan Wade, who's going to speak and offer the government's perspective. But we'll break this down as we go. Scott McAfee is wondering what's going on with the communication between Fani's office and the White House.
All right, so let's talk about your part two, White House communications.
Right. So we know that there were contacts between the White House and the prosecution team because Mr. Wade's billing records that were filed into the Mike Roman motions show a conference of White House counsel on May 22nd of 22, and another conference at the White House, I believe, in November 18th of 22.
Okay, now these are records from Nathan Wade's bills, right? We saw this in the Roman motion, but we have not heard yet about the actual communications that have landed in Fulton County's office. So up until this point, this has been largely speculative. Like the defense has been saying, well, we've seen the billing entry. We don't know exactly what that means. We don't know if that was a meeting about whatever it was. Now they're going to say eventually that they actually sent letters over to Fani's office. So he's describing just the billing records, and then they're going to reveal more information to us.
Which brackets more or less the work of the special purpose grand jury. They were impaneled on May 2nd of 22. And I think they heard their last testimony right around that November timeframe. The reason that matters, Your Honor, is the obvious political dimensions of the case. The DA was already disqualified from investigating or prosecuting Burt Jones because of a political conflict of interest, because she was campaigning for his Democrat opponent using the imprimatur of her office. So the DA's politics were already in this case on a de jure basis, long before the indictment was even issued. The White House has its fingerprints on all 4 criminal prosecutions of President Trump. And now we know they have their fingerprints on this case.
Okay, so he gave us an interesting conversation jumping off point about this case. So he said that Fani has already been disqualified. In a prior case, back in 2022, a judge blocked Fani, seen here, from developing a case against a Republican state senator. He was already blocked on this. A Georgia judge on Monday blocked Fani from investigating Burt Jones. Jones is one of the 16 fake electors who's been charged. Jones is currently running for lieutenant governor against Democrat Charlie Bailey. Fani campaigned and hosted a campaign fundraiser for Bailey, and she donated to him. So she supports this guy called Charlie Bailey. Charlie Bailey is running against this other guy, Jones. And Burt Jones has now been indicted by Fani. Isn't that convenient? Yeah, hey, Charlie Bailey, this is Fani Willis talking. I'd love to host a fundraiser for you. Yeah, campaign fundraiser. How's the campaign going? He's like, well, it should be going good. I could use some more money. But also my opponent's a pain in the butt. Yeah, his name's Burt, and he's driving me crazy. And she says, oh, guess what? I'm the DA. How about I just indict him for you? So in his ruling, a Fulton County Superior Court called Judge McBurney, he said Willis's office may ask witnesses about the senator's role. What our office may not do is make sure any such evidence and develop it against the senator, saying, last week, McBurney criticized Willis for hosting a fundraiser, said the optics are horrific. That was a long time ago. Talk about these optics. I wonder what this judge thinks about these current optics. The Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia can select a replacement district attorney, and that person can question Jones, but she's been disqualified from that. So Fani's obviously very political no matter what she does.
President Biden is reported to have complained that the Department of Justice was taking too long with the case against President Trump.
That's right.
And he said at the White House on November the 9th of 2022 that he would pursue every constitutional means
Joe Biden
of stopping President Trump from taking power.
That's right.
And that was 9 days before the November 18th meeting at the White House reflected on Mr. Wade's bills.
Interesting.
The criminal cases against President Trump are being pushed to have their trials before or during the election. The DA in this case is pushing to have this case start in August. And according to their time budget, that means that it would be tried while voting was occurring. A reasonable person might view the whole picture as having a political purpose. And in fact, a lot of people in this country view it that way according to opinion polls. And certainly most Republicans view it that way, assuming they're still entitled to have opinions.
Not really.
So those communications with the White House are relevant to a potential selective prosecution or due process defense in this case. And as for Mr. Clark, one reason we are a little suspicious about politics is we cannot find any other cases where a lawyer or anybody else, for that matter, was prosecuted over a draft letter that was never sent.
Talking about Jeffrey Clark, who's
under a theory of attempted false writing or attempted false statement. I
Drafted
haven't
letter.
found a case where that happened in Georgia, nor anywhere else.
Of course
Maybe
you
it's
haven't.
out there, but I haven't found it yet.
No, of course not. Because
So that alone,
yeah, it's insane.
you know, when you can't explain it, when it doesn't make any sense, there must be some other reason. It is reasonable to infer that it's politics. So we're asking the court to order them to produce those documents in addition to the two-week correspondence. Now, I expect what we're going to hear is what we heard on President Trump's motion, that there aren't any documents, but they haven't said that yet, so they get a chance.
Okay, so do you see where this is going? I gave away the surprise ending. Okay, they admit that they've got docs, but this defense lawyer right now is like, well, they don't have anything. They say they don't have anything. We just got the billing entries and hope, but we need to look into it.
Chance to come up and respond to that.
Okay, well, we'll start there then.
All right, thank you, John.
All right, Mr. Bernick. So let's start there.
Again, we're traveling under Brady, and he's asking for evidence, and our communications with the White House counsel's office was about logistics and procedures, whether they had a TUI type process in place.
Okay, so he's saying they're not entitled to any of this. They want access to this. They're using Brady to get it. They're saying that Brady entitles the defense to exculpatory information that might exonerate their defendant. In this case, it's Jeffrey Clark. But Brady is not applicable to everything. You don't get the government's entire case file. You just get the exculpatory stuff. So he's coming out and saying, well, it's not exculpatory at all. There's nothing in there. It's just logistics and procedure, and they're not entitled to that.
It wasn't about obtaining any type of evidence for them.
Okay.
But this seems a bit different. We're not talking so much about the logistics of witnesses as to whether there is potentially any coordination or a political motivation that might.
Well, that's
Yeah, Judge is exactly right. Logistics for what? For what? With the White House counsel, what are they logisticking with you?
And it would be speculation right now because I think he concedes he doesn't have access to your emails, and it would be unlikely unless he was sitting in the room or bugged it that he'd have any idea what was in there. But apparently he's got some documentation that a meeting did occur.
I mean, yeah.
And so
A meeting did occur from Nathan Wade's own billing records, which we got through Mike Roman's filing.
I guess the issue would be a selective prosecution claim can be brought pre-trial if they think that there are grounds on it. And that's a bit different than just asking about whether a witness is going to show up or is not going to show up, right?
Okay, so in other words, the defense needs to know a little bit more about this White House counsel stuff Because if it looks like the White House is pressuring Fani's office to prosecute, then the Jeffrey Clark and the RICO, the Trump defense, all the defendants, they could file a motion for vindictive or selective prosecution saying, look, this is not actually legitimate. The White House is compelling, by being the White House and the feds, this district to bring this claim. But Trump's defense, Clark's defense, can't know about that unless they can see the documents. He says, well, it's kind of like other things. It's just logistics and procedures. And he wants to dig into that. Why is it just logistics and procedures about other witnesses, about who's going to show up to testify with the White House counsel?
So the original question was, is there something actually in writing that shows communications between the office and the White House counsel?
Here it comes.
We did get a letter from the White House counsel's office.
All right,
It was
so
about logistics and procedures, as stated before.
all right, so it's just that you're saying the sole written communication, whether by text, whether by email, whether by written correspondence, solely consists of one written letter.
Written letter, or there's 2 written letters on it.
Well, one, actually, there's 2. Okay, so 2 written letters from the White House counsel. Yeah, actually, there is one. Oh, there's one. Oh, there's only one. Okay, so the only sole thing. Did you see what the judge was trying to do? Trying to kind of clean that up a little bit. I actually like this judge so far. It's like, okay, so just one thing. Actually, there's 2.
And that's a bit different than just asking about whether a witness is going to show up or is not going to show up, right?
Correct.
So the original question was, is there something actually in writing that shows communications between the office and the White House counsel?
Yeah.
We did get a letter from the White House counsel's office.
All right,
It
so
was about logistics and procedures, as stated before.
all right, so it's just that
It
you're
was about logistics and procedures. What are they sending them questions about?
saying the sole written communication, whether by text, whether by email, whether by written correspondence, solely consists of one written letter.
Written letter, or there's 2 written letters on it. About procedures, about how we interviewed, whether it was a 2-type process with former or current White House officials.
Okay, so it's about 2E type processes, which I'm guessing is about discovery rules in the state of Georgia, whatever their criminal code is. So the White House is asking them about their interviews, about who we interviewed, whether it was in compliance with these processes. Why would the White House even have questions? Okay, look, don't tell me that questions are not instructive. Here's the letter that I could hypothesize. Dear Fani's office and Nathan, hopefully you guys enjoyed your cruise together. Question for you. We are just asking about the logistics and procedures of your ongoing prosecution. Here are some of the questions we have about the logistics. Did you interview this person by this date? You say, no, well, that's a logistical thing. Or what was the schedule with this person? Has so-and-so actually interviewed with you yet? Because we might need to talk to him next. Right? How about that one? Did you interview this person by this date? Because we're going to schedule this to interview him later. You go, oh, that's just logistics. It's a scheduling letter. And you're sitting there on the prosecution's team going, actually, no, I didn't even know who that person was. Who is that person? John Doe. Who is this person? No, never heard of him. So no, we're not interviewing him this week. So this logistically, you can schedule him later on. Whatever it is, right? Like you can communicate a message to somebody without communicating a message to somebody. We just have some questions about whether you're scheduled to interview this team of people. No, didn't even know they exist, but now I'm going to be. Thanks. And it looks like logistics and procedure when it's not at all.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we're talking about selective enforcement here, and let's just go to what you need to prove with a selective enforcement action. I mean, in Georgia, for there to be a constitutional violation, selective enforcement must represent any intentional and purposeful discrimination, which is based upon.
Hey, my man, we can't tell if there is something there yet to begin to make the claim. So he's jumping ahead to the next chapter. We're not there yet, brother. We have to talk about access to the documents so that we can determine whether we can bring a claim or not. He's saying, well, they can't even bring a claim. We don't even know if we can yet. That's the point.
Deliberate, unjustifiable standards such as race, religion, or the arbitrary classification. Georgia also recognizes that just because there's a first time prosecuting someone under a statute, or there's the first time that someone might have been prosecuted under a statute that's been on the books for a long time, that does not give rise to a selective prosecution. And also, while we're talking here about his reasons for wanting these items, his reasons for wanting these items are inconsistent with each other. On one hand, he's talking about us talking to the White House counsel's office, them aiding us and having a selective prosecution, them directing us towards a prosecution. On the other hand, we're talking about DOJ hampering us and not letting us prosecute the people that they told us to go prosecute. So his inconsistent theories are going at it. He's just trying to get any way under the sun. And just to recap, these are about logistics and procedure. This isn't evidence. This isn't anything that is obligated to be disclosed under Brady.
All right. So kind of a kitchen sink approach right there. He's just going down his bullet points, throwing a bunch of stuff out there. Most of that is in the next chapter. Like, we're not there yet. We want to talk about getting access to the document so we can decide whether there's a legitimate claim or not for selective prosecution or vindictive prosecution. Yeah, he's a little nervous up there at the podium.
Would you agree, though, that Brady doesn't necessarily have to be evidence that on its face is material, but something that could lead to material evidence?
Exactly. We want to investigate it.
So it just has to initiate that chain of discovery.
It could initiate the chain of discovery, but in the end, it has to be about evidence or what's coming out.
Sure. Okay. And so if this created some kind of lead, you would agree that a selective prosecution is a viable claim? There are a lot of hurdles, and I don't think that they've jumped any of them in this, as alleged in this motion to compel.
Yeah, we're
they
not
have to
there
show
yet.
Disparate treatment among other
Not
similarly
there yet.
situated potential
But we're working
defendants.
on it.
That hasn't even been alleged. But a selective prosecution is a real claim.
It is a defense that's viable in Georgia.
All right, and that's one that would have to come up before trial because a jury would never get to hear any of this.
There is case law that says it is a pretrial motion, yes.
All right, and so Mr. McDougall, let me just emphasize that. This argument you're making about selective prosecution, would you agree that that is something that doesn't go to the merits of the case at all? That's not something a jury would ever hear or be able to consider?
Well, I mean, part of my argument is the case has no merit and he's being prosecuted because of politics. So the merits and the selective prosecution argument are joined. But I think I want to reserve the right to change my mind, but I think that's what you said is right, that it wouldn't go to the jury.
Okay, because I mean, effectively otherwise you're arguing for nullification. Is that fair?
Yeah, which, you know.
I guess we'll address that if we get there.
Oh, gosh, I can't even take it. That was so good. Okay, so you're not supposed to argue jury nullification to the jury. Oh, my gosh, that was incredible. So listen to this guy. You can't see it on the screen. You got to listen closely. I'll turn it up. The judge says, you can't argue jury nullification. If you do that, you're arguing jury nullification. And this guy just scoffs under his breath. He's like, well, yeah, basically. And he just told it right to the judge. Okay, let me rewind that. Amazing.
Court in a storm, Your Honor.
Because I mean,
but I think that's what you said is right, that it wouldn't go to the jury.
okay, because I mean, effectively otherwise you're arguing for nullification. Is that fair?
Yeah, which, you know.
I guess we'll address that if we.
He says, yeah, you know, yeah, that's what I'm doing. He just tells it right to the judge. And the judge just says, well, I'll deal with it when we get there. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing, Judge. Now, you're not supposed to do that. Like, you can't argue jury nullification to a jury. That's out of form. That's out of order. Like, the jury's there. They have to follow the law. And he just smokes him. He's like, well, we're going to argue it to the jury. Yeah. And he's like, okay, we'll deal with it when we get there, the judge. Amazing.
We get there.
Court in a storm, Your Honor.
What did you say?
I guess we'll address that if we get there.
Port in a storm, Your Honor.
It's a port in the storm, I think, Your Honor, something like that.
So what I'm getting at is,
oh my gosh,
also coming back to the original point, which is the timing of Brady. You know, it's usually supposed to be at trial, but however, there's the caveat unless earlier disclosure would have impaired the defense, right? And we're kind of in the situation where this is a pretrial motion that they have to make. And by the time you get to trial, perhaps it's too late to even make it. So
Any port in a storm. Any port in a storm is the phrase. Excellent. Really good. And I like he's just being candid about it. It's really funny to tell he's like, well, you can't argue jury nullification. He's like, well, kind of going to do it anyways. I can't even take it. So funny.
Point being is in situations where the materiality is even somewhat up to debate, I think the proper procedures and in-camera review. And if you're saying there are 2 letters that exist, then it seems that those could very easily be submitted under seal. We can see if there's anything in there even remotely resembling something talking about political prosecution or selective prosecution that would further the investigation of that.
Now, I want to be very careful here on that, right? Like, the letter is clearly not going to say that there is, it's not going to be Joe Biden says prosecute Trump, signed White House counsel. Like, we're not expecting that at all. What this judge just said is, I think it makes a lot of sense to review those 2 letters in camera, meaning at the judge's chambers, private, off the record, when they're filed under seal. In other words, let me look at them, then I'll decide what to do about them. But the standard, I hope the judge looks at them. I would like to see them. I don't know what's so complicated about it. If they're benign, why don't we all just see them? Like, let us see what the White House said about all this stuff. But it's something he'll take a look at under seal. And again, it's not going to be like a big red Sharpie says, prosecute Trump. It's going to be something else that probably looks a lot like logistics and procedures. Hey, we just have a question, or just so you know, we're doing this thing or whatever. But it's secret dog whistles about this is where you should go, right? It's conversations about the case. White House should have stayed far away from it all. And the judge is going to look at it, it sounds like.
And if so, then that resolves this motion to compel. Any reactions to that, Mr. Burning?
I think it doesn't allow them to root around in our files, which is not required under Brady, and that is the remedy for a plausible claim under Brady is to do an in-camera inspection.
All right. Anything else then you think would be relevant to this issue?
No, yeah.
Mr. McDougall?
Just a couple points, Your Honor.
Sure.
So I learned something I didn't know, which is that there are letters.
We all did, yeah.
The second meeting in November doesn't say it's with White House counsel. It says DC White House. So maybe it was with the White House counsel's office, but you can't tell it from the time entry.
Yeah, and so maybe that's not. Maybe that's actually with Washington, D.C. with political people. Like, is it just lawyers, or are there other political operatives in the room? Is it White House counsel plus Karine or whomever? Who is it?
The way Mr. Burnick described it is a TUI-like set of considerations at the White House. The White House does not have TUI regulations. Okay, so what considerations would there be?
So 2E regulations, again, Georgia rules. And so he's saying, no, we're talking about 2E and all these different things.
It would have to be executive privilege. It would have to be. So their position on executive privilege, if it's articulated in that correspondence, is something that we know what their position is with respect to congressional committees, with respect to the criminal prosecution, but this is a state prosecution.
I think we're going back to
the government, and these privileges are much, much different in this form than they are in those forms.
Well, let me make sure I'm clear here, though. The original motion to compel, the request is copies of all communication with White House counsel's office, right?
Yeah, I think I did say that.
And so that's relevant solely as it relates to building a claim for selective prosecution?
Well, I've learned something that I didn't know, Your Honor.
Okay.
In this hearing, which is that the letter is a TUI-like dialogue. And I think we ought to get that too, for all the reasons I gave as to the other TUI correspondence. And the TUI correspondence is not just with DOJ. There are other federal agencies that have former employees with knowledge relevant to this case who are on the state's witness list.
Nice.
Like the former head of CISA, Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, people like that.
Nice.
And we might want to put up the former director of the Office of National Intelligence.
Woo.
Mr. John Ratcliffe. So
that actually reminds me of a point I meant to ask you on part one. Were you saying that you were needing the testimony of Rosen and Donahue because you believed that would help your defense?
No, I'm sorry, Your Honor, if I wasn't clear. from what we know, their video testimony was presented to the special purpose.
You would be
grand jury.
fine if they didn't show up in court, is what you're telling me.
I'd be thrilled
Okay.
if they didn't show up.
Amazing.
All right, I just want to make that
I don't
clear.
think I would have to show up either.
This attorney is great.
Okay. All right. All right. I understand the point you're making on TUI. I'm still struggling.
I'd love it if the witnesses don't show up because my case is going to be dismissed. They need those witnesses to make their point. If they're not here, I win.
To see how that fits into Brady, but I'll take a look at the case law
And,
and we'll see.
I know it's not binding on the court, but we did cite to a section of the Justice Manual that that exculpatory information should be provided so that it's useful in time for motions. And that's consistent with the the underlying doctrinal purpose of affording the defendant due process. I mean, do we have to wait until after the conclusion of the state's case to know that they can't prove it if we know that these guys can't testify? I certainly hope not.
Mr. Byrne, do you want to speak to that at all? If we're even talking about a material issue, can the state prove its case without Rosen and Donahue?
I mean, we're under, prosecutor ethics to continually review our case as we get witnesses and evidence and different facts come up. And so if we couldn't prove our case, we have to be able to review them. Might have to dismiss it. It happens all the time in other prosecutions and happens in this courthouse that we can't prove something, we null process. So
you null process, yeah. Or you grant diversion deals, right? Grant diversion deals so that you don't have to admit that. You don't have to get a dismissal. Threaten Sidney Powell, threaten Jenna Ellis with a bunch of jail. Then when you realize your case is crap, turn around, give them diversion deals that are going to result in all of their charges being dismissed and the cases essentially the records being sealed. They were not charged or convicted of anything. No convictions at all will be on their record after the thing is concluded. So yeah, it does happen. Generally not in a nationally renowned RICO case. You dismiss other cases like when the victim doesn't show up, but this is a national case with all these co-defendants. They're just going to dismiss Jeffrey Clark's prosecution?
As it comes through, we'll continue to abide by our ethical obligations.
Your Honor, by indicting Mr. Clark, they have represented to the court and to us
At the time of indictment.
and the world that they can prove the case.
Yep.
And they may have a letter that tells them they can't.
Now they're hemming and hawing about it.
And if that's true, that's important.
They're jerking us around in court today.
As I understand it, that letter was saying potentially that they couldn't testify before the special grand jury. And I guess there's a question of whether they might have another letter at some point in the future indicating whether that's going to be the case for trial. So the argument evolves, right?
So maybe the witnesses that the government needs to prove Jeffrey Clark's case, remember there's a bunch of different charges for different components of the conspiracy. The RICO conspiracy, like Sidney Powell was involved in like hiring an expert witness to go investigate stuff. And the list goes on, right? All these different little chapters of this much, much broader book. And now they're saying you don't have your witnesses in my case. Those two witnesses are not going to testify, presumably, is what he's excited about. But also they were colluding with the White House.
And just to clarify on this letter with the DOJ, we're not getting into the substance of it, whether it was a denial of grant, because that gets into the substance of what's going on.
Okay, so the DOJ sent some other letters and they may be saying, well, these guys can't talk.
Just that it's generally about TUI processes.
Sure. All right. Well, I guess as indicated, I'll take a second pass at how these two requests might fit into Brady. And as to the second issue, we'll start just with the in-camera review, seal the documents on any correspondence with White House counsel's office, as that's what was requested in the motion to compel.
Granted.
And why don't we start there? If you can have that to me, if you can compile it. And then after I've had a chance to review it, then I'll make the findings, whatever I need to make in the written order addressing all of these issues.
And Your Honor, if I may be so bold as to suggest an in-camera review of any TUI correspondence with the other agencies as well.
Well, let me see where Brady falls in that, where it falls first. I think that I'm stuck more on the legal issues there.
Good for him.
All right.
All right, Judge.
And we'll go from there. Anything else then on this motion to compel?
No, but
Otherwise-
we might approach the bench to discuss the motion that I filed earlier this week with that request to file under seal.
Sure, that's fine. We can do that. Before we do that, just we can wrap it up though if there's nothing else.
Well, when do you want the correspondence to you following receipt?
Now, 5 o'clock tonight.
I mean, how long do you think it'll take you to compile it?
Oh.
If it's two pieces of paper.
Those 2 pieces of paper, but if you want them up, yeah, that shouldn't take that long.
I'll be here tomorrow too.
Okay.
And I think
Now,
you can just do that, a
bring 'em
physical
up.
copy in an envelope. And let's say COB
Do you
by
have copies in your file right now? Bring it up here, my friend.
the end of the week. All right. Okay. If there's nothing else, then we'll be off the record.
All right, thank you.
Oh, man. So that was a lot of fun. And this attorney, McDonough, is outstanding. I absolutely love his candor. Well, that's jury nullification. Yeah, I know. What's your point? Any port in a storm, my friend. We're doing it. I love it. All right. So what we see here is a nice little victory here for the defense. So those 2 letters are now going to be ordered to be disclosed, have been ordered to be disclosed, over to the judge under seal. So we're not going to see them. He says there's only 2 pages. 2 pages. That's it. We'll see if they're anything longer than that. You know, White House is usually a little bit more verbose, but judge will take a look at it. And what I also love about this, man, is he also submitted another filing, or he actually submitted permission to submit another filing under seal. So he might have some more major bombshells that he's going to drop any minute. And so the gears of justice continue to come off the rails there in Fulton County, as their prosecution continually proves that their prosecutors are incompetent largely. But now let's get some reaction from this guy. Mike Collins is a representative out of Georgia. Here's what he said about this. He says that Georgia state representatives are now moving to impeach Big Fani, the biggest Fani in Fulton. Says they should use their ability and their rights to impeach this lady and get her off their case. So this is a Georgia state representative who's commenting on local Georgia stuff. You can see there's Fani, there's Wade, these 2 little alleged lovebirds walking around. Here's what he says.
Nathan Wade, but now there's some more going on.
Yeah, this investigation happening with this committee that was formed. State representative, Georgia state representative is moving to impeach her. Here to weigh in is Georgia Congressman Mike Collins. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. This Senate investigation, the state Senate investigation, I want to be very clear that, again, this is still a local case, a local investigation. This has been approved to move forward. What do you see coming out of it?
Well, you know, I think the wheels are clearly falling off the bus on this investigation. I was telling a group earlier this morning that I think this was more made for a Jerry Springer episode than it is anything. When you've got Fani Willis, who's obviously got her eye on somebody else's Fanny, instead of actually out there trying to do the people's work and trying to, you know, pay for it off the taxpayers' dime.
You know, sir, this case has now got national attention because a lot of people are wondering what is going on in Fulton County. The fact that all of this is going on behind the scenes, and yet the former president is facing some serious state charges here. Of course, I'm referring to Donald Trump and then those other co-defendants in the case. Republican Georgia State Rep Charlize Byrd officially filing a resolution to impeach the DA, posting this to X, saying, with freedom on the line, bold action is necessary. It's time for the legislature to do its constitutional duty and hold corrupt Fulton DA Fani Willis accountable, which is why she's introduced the articles of impeachment against Willis. Congressman Collins, do you think this happens here? Would there be support?
Yeah, you know, I think it should. I think it's evident. And I think as more and more evidence comes out, especially over in the divorce court that's going on between Wade and his soon-to-be ex-wife.
Jocelyn.
That's where a lot of your evidence has been coming from as to where the money has been funneled so Wade and Fani Willis could go on their escapades and their trips.
Cruises, Caribbean, Napa Valley.
The state legislature has the ability. They should take that up, and they should use their ability and their rights to impeach and get
all right.
To get them off the streets. We have a huge problem out there with our homeless veterans.
All right, so they're talking about some other things, but obviously Fani is focused on her RICO charges and her RICO case. So very good proceeding there in Judge Scott McAfee's courtroom. We're excited to see if those letters are ultimately released or unsealed so we can see what this collusion looks like. And again, even if the letters don't have a paint by number prosecution, schedule, prosecute this and do this, it's still conversations, and I'm very curious what is inside. So we're going to be here continuing to cover the Georgia case, all of the Trump prosecutions, wherever they're happening, New York, Florida, DC, Georgia, anywhere else they decide to come after him. We'll be here to cover it. So my friends, thank you for joining and subscribing to our channel, wherever it is you're watching this. Don't forget to check out robertgovea.com. The link is down in the description below. All of our PDFs are there. We have our store, which is available. You can grab a hat, grab some gear, and look good while you're supporting the show. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, we covered some good ground today. Now it's time to hear from you. We talked about Fani prosecutors admitting that they were colluding with the White House, including in 2 letters. We have E. Jean's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, apparently was mentored by Lewis Kaplan out of the Southern District of New York. And Trump slams the we'll call it a pre-decision report from this grifter monitor who got $2 million plus in just 14 months. Nice payday if you can get it. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. See what you have to say about all of this and more. Of course, we are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party today after the show. We also have our member stream tomorrow morning at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. So we will see you over there in the morning. But let's see who is in the house, my friends. Thank you so much for your support. Appreciate all of your contributions here. First one from MAGA Hat over on Locals says, Judge Kaplan was dismissed from 2021 to 2022. Kaplan was the presiding judge on matters relating to Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew over allegations of another assault. Yeah, I don't think, wow. We didn't spend a lot of time in that case, although we did cover the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Thanks for the update, MAGA Hat. Hey, this one from Glocky on Local says, hey, Rob, it looks like the feds are erasing all the data and communications that Fani had with DC. Real Patrick Webb says, Fulton County, Georgia has been hit with a cyber attack. Oh, no. The outage has shut down its phone systems and paused online transactions, including property taxes, purchase of firearms, marriage licenses, county officials say. I wonder if Fani's email system was in there as well. Good for the thanks for the update, Glocky. Appreciate you sending that one in. Thanks for the dono, my friend. And it reminds me of the J6 pipe bombers records. You know, they got everybody's records, including every single purchase if you were in DC on January 6th, but not the J6 pipe bomber. Got everyone else's except his. Weird. Old drill sergeant is in the house. Says hashtag never Nikki. Not now. Not ever. And you're right about that, man. She had some wild statements this weekend. I was actually going to play a clip of her today, but I can't even stand listening to her speak. It just drives me nuts. She was talking about how the E. Jean Carroll verdict was right. And I spared us all the pain because we can't go that far. B. Torn over on the tubes. Thank you, B. Torn. Says the mission is to taint Trump as a criminal before the election. The inevitable appeal wins will come long after the election is over. He loses, they'll party. He wins, the cases still cost him big money. Absolutely true. I think that this is really the game. They need to get it in before so that they can have the labels for the election. What happens after is really inconsequential because their theory is that the outcome of these prosecutions are going to taint him so bad that he loses and they won't have to deal with the consequences of the aftermath. It's pretty nefarious there, B-Torn. We got this one from Quarter Native. Says New Yorkers are complaining, I almost said it, about an Oklahoma city potentially getting a skyscraper that will be the tallest building in America. Like any smart developer is going to build in New York now. Not a chance. Such a good point, Quarter Native. And I love that story, by the way. So Oklahoma is apparently, talking about building the tallest building in the country, I think. And it looks beautiful. And I hope they do. I hope they do. Because it would be fun to stick it to the New Yorkers. We got Tony Hay says, heard, not seen. Peter Roden is coming in. Tony Hay, 5 new members. Heard, not seen's coming in. Peter R, Sarah L, the Sentinels here, along with Robert G, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. Tony, you're the man. Thanks for bringing in our 5 newest members. Ella's here. What's up, Ella? No comment, but a very nice... Oh, it's a sunglasses person. Oh, what's up? What's up, Ella? Thank you for that. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for the dono. Samuel says, that is the symbol is a pound. The UK's symbol for the dollar. Yeah, and I wanted to say shilling when I was reading that. Like, that's not right. Pound, that's the right word. Sorry to our friends in the UK. Hey, Sandy says, your crush on Alina is adorable. Well, she's married. Anyways, thank you, Sandy. Glad someone likes it. Knox says, happy Monday, all. This has become so ridiculous. Even my diehard Tucson Democrat friends are starting to wonder. Really? Wow. Knox, that's pretty amazing. She's talking about Tucson. That's Arizona. It's about 2 hours down from here. I have family down in Tucson. And one or two of them are definitely Tucson libs. That's for sure. And you know who you are. We love you out there. But I think you're right about this. This was my point. Okay, at our last Thanksgiving, when we went down to Tucson for Thanksgiving, it wasn't the same old political conversation, that we're normally used to. They were all kind of quiet this year. Maybe your experience was the same. Roy boy, what's up, Roy? Thank you for this. Hey, look at this. We got. Hey, sometimes things are just serendipitous, isn't it? So first of all, look at this. This was our explanation from Samuel Delaney. He says that symbol, the L symbol, is a pound. It's the UK symbol for the dollar. Then look, lo and behold, Roy boy sends one in. It's a pound. 10 pounds. Says, Rob, keep your mouse off the screen when Alina's on. Sorry about that. I had a difficult time thinking, and my motor functions all went down about 30%. So the mouse, I'm like, what? Sorry about that. I'll try to remember next time. And I'll hands in the air. Oh my gosh. All right. Anyway, shout out to Alina Abba. Whoa. Ian Mack says, is she going to donate the money or to pledge it? Is she going to donate the money or to pledge it? I don't know. You mean you're talking about E. Jean Carroll, right? That's going to be a curious question. Probably neither. I don't know what she's going to do. Ian, what's up? Thank you for that one. Knox says, that Carroll woman sounds like she had a stroke. Yeah. Read about how she chased Hunter S. Thompson and woke up with Ben Wa balls in her cave. I don't even know what those things are. Ben Wa balls in her cave. All right. Do I have to do research for this one, Knox? I have to dig into it. She lives in the mouse house with blue trees and blue painted rocks. So I have no idea what's out there. Oh, here's a link to her book. Only E. Jean Carroll, called by the New Yorker Times the female answer to Hunter Biden, could write a gonzo biography of the master. Carroll writes of the drug-fueled and sex-crazed time she had when she spent living with Hunter Thompson. Yeah, she's a sex degenerate. Okay, that's all she talks about all the time. Thanks for the link, Knox. Interesting. It's on Google Books. Amazing. We got this one from Jane over on Rumble. Says, have E. Jean and Donald ever taken lie detector tests regarding the Bergdorf incident? I know such tests are not considered rock-solid proof of truth, but was that ever proposed? Not that I've heard, Jane. Not that I've ever heard. I don't think that they did really anything. I mean, there's not even any evidence. So why would they want to put that crazy woman in front of a lie detector test? Maybe they did, but I don't think so. Hey, what's up? Quarter Native says Parlatore, the lawyer that we listened to, was on Sean Ryan, and he said something very different than now, shaking my head. That's interesting. So is he giving two different takes on two different shows, just pitching to the audience? That's not cool. I don't know if he's doing that, but sounds like that's what you're saying. That does not sound cool. Valerie says, thanks for all your work. I watch every night. Thank you, Valerie. Valerie H., thanks for saying that. And this is your first super chat on a live stream. Woo! Valerie, thanks for making this show your first. We're grateful for that. And for the dono, I'm glad that you watch it every night. I really appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for inviting us into your home and being a part of your life. Very cool. Thank you, Valerie. Valerie H. in the house. We got Stefan is here. Says, as corrupt as we think those in power are, multiply by 10. Now we're getting warm. Ben Wa balls, also known as Kegel balls, are small weighted balls. What? We've got a lot of pictures of these things on locals. What? I got to go back to that comment. What? What? How she woke up with Ben Wa balls in her cave. My friends, okay. I'm looking at images of these things right now. I'm not putting them on the screen, that's for sure. I don't know what those are. All right. So here, Radice says, I'm glad I didn't Google that one today. I'm really glad I didn't Google that. Sometimes I do that. I have the habit of just Googling stuff. Like, I wonder what that is. Oh, man. Okay. So, yeah, speak quarter native. See, Rob, Ben Wa balls are a toy for, down below. And Radice says, no, Rob, don't research any Ben balls. What are these metallic balls? Oh my gosh. All right. I'm not putting them on the screen because I don't know what the heck we're talking about. I think I could probably put those on the screen because they just look like worry balls, from like those Japanese, the worry balls that you put around in your hand, although that, that also looks a little strange there. But the worry balls, people put those inside themselves? That's a weird times ahead. Okay. So thank you for the updates on this one. Marta Keyser says big moves on the J6 cases. Washington time today. I'll take a look at that, Marta. Thanks for the heads up on that. On corrupt proceedings, we have some verdicts. I'll take a look. All right. Thank you. We got thank you, Marta. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for the dono. 51K says Haley isn't MAGA. She's Mika. I like it. The military industrial complex always. Pretty true. Pretty true. She made a lot of money in their orbit after she was the governor. Air Force vet says terms taint guilty. Terms taint guilty. From Air Force vet in the house. Thanks for being a membo, Air Force vet. A bad poet says what Fani replied to the White House equals 2 White House visits. I can see what you're saying. So maybe like it's correspondence, right? So he said there were 2 pages. Did they not respond to the White House? Or was that the second page? So the White House sent a letter to them. Were they just rude and they didn't send anything back? Well, maybe they did. Maybe we should see that. And maybe there was another letter back and we should see that one too. What's happening over there? Very interesting. What were the 2 visits all about? We got Norman says, what's up? Norman S says, Fanny's foibles are catching up with her. I think you're right about that. She's got a lot of foibles and hot dogs from Nathan's. Chubby says they're fighting so hard to not release the letters. It has the opposite effect. It's the Streisand effect. When you try to suppress something, everybody talks about it. Why fight so hard to keep them a secret? Well, because they don't want anyone to know that they've been colluding with the White House, because people like us will scream about it and say, this is absolutely insane and ridiculous. Now, maybe they are innocuous. Maybe there's nothing inside of them at all. And it's just like, hey, we just wanted to say hello or something. Even that, it's like, why is the White House contacting you? Why are they saying hello to you? I have questions. I'm skeptical. I think they don't want you to see the collusion, the cover up. Air Force vet, what's up? Says, did you hear what the guy in the beard said? We just prosecute who the White House tells us to prosecute. Air Force vet doing the translation for us. Blah, 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 blah. Joe Biden told me to do it, so I did it. From Air Force vet. I'm trying to think about who else might have said that. Thank you for the comment, Air Force vet. I appreciate that one. And Tony Hay, another one, bringing in more membos. Tony Hay, bringing in D. Gillis, Peng, Queen Bee's Art Hive, and more, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets in the house. Thank you, Tony Hay. We got Crash says, Rob, in the Marine Corps, logistics are essential to get ammunition to the trigger pullers at the front. Exactly, right. It's a supply chain. So they're getting Joe's ammunition over to Fani. In other words, they're sending Fani evidence, ammunition, information, knowledge that she can parlay into her prosecution. And amazing. Stephen Evans, yes, multiply by 10. We're getting warm if we're talking about our actual corruption. And I think that is true. Okay, we are skipping over these metallic balls in this link here. Thank you for those. Lenora, welcome, our newest supporters in the house. Very nice to have you. Thank you for joining us as our newest supporter. Hey, and new members, don't forget to grab the Telegram link. So if you're a member on YouTube, on the main homepage channel, so go to the main page, scroll over to the community tab section, scroll down a little bit. You're going to find some Telegram links in there, and it's going to be a members only post. So become a member, get the Telegram link, join us for the after party. We'll see you there. C. John, man, almost at a 1-year anniversary, my friend. Amazing. Thanks for being here so long. Says, Rob, if the first Carroll trial gets overturned, wouldn't that nullify the second trial as well, since they couldn't use the first one to justify the second? Yeah, I would agree with that completely. The argument in the second trial was it was incorporating the arguments from the first trial. So if the first trial is bad, I would say it would vacate the second trial on top of it. We've got this one from this old guy says, if Trump's net worth is $2.6 billion, any misstatement or mistake in his financial statements of $195 million or less would be insignificant as far as auditing standards are concerned. That's wild. Yeah. So I'm not an accountant person or know much about this, but I think what you're saying is it's kind of de minimis. It's like a small amount. I mean, what percentage of that? It's less than what, 10%, right? It's not even a 10% off. So you got margins of errors and things like that. It's wild when $195 a million, it's like kind of like a rounding error. Like it's kind of like tip money. Hey, you're right, John. We missed John McGarvey brought in some new membos. And you're right, we missed this. John McGarvey bringing in new membos. What's up, John? No Jabski's coming in. James is coming in. Karen E. We got Dan M. and Brian B. And Donut Mind Me gave me the reminder. I missed that one. Thank you, Donut. And John, thanks for the membos. Newest membos, thanks for coming in. And so, my friends, thank you for all of those over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, our friends on YouTube, our friends on Rumble. Very, very nice to have you. Thank you for all the amazing support that you send our way. Let's say hello to our friends on X before we jump over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. And debrief will also be on Telegram for our YouTube friends. But who's on X with us today? Let's see who is here. We got some people watching the show. 26 people. Woo! We're in double digits, my friends. Amazing. Hey, what's up? Dark Side is here. We got Goofy for Jesus. Let's do a quick scroll. Let's see who's joining us. Dark Side Digital is here. Says his name is pronounced Javert. He's the inspector and the main antagonist. I think it's of Les Mis, right? Les Miserables. And a main antagonist that spent an inordinate amount of time chasing a man who stole a loaf of some bread. Ah, that sounds like a good, what's the word? Avatar. It's a good character, right? Somebody who's obsessed with somebody who just stole a loaf of bread. Yeah. Feline says 2 pages or 2 different correspondences. I thought it was the latter. That's what I thought, Feline Fun. Yeah, that's what I thought she said, or he said. 2 different letters. Are they both a single page? Like, that's all? Goofy for Jesus says, take our border back convoy starts today. They may be passing through your town, through Phoenix. Man, I know there's a lot of activity going on out there. George, what's up, George? Phil Reno says, support a loyal Watching the Watchers listener and get a decal. Support a listener and get your decal. And Mainer's here says, if you are in a membo on YouTube, look at what you're missing. It's great times. And yeah, that's a video recording of our Membo stream. That's what the Membo stream looks like. And oh, I think that was me singing Bomb Iran. That's a clip of me singing Bomb Iran. Yeah, I think that's what it was. And you have to go to X to watch that clip. This morning we were listening to John McCain. That's who he was. John McCain singing Bomb Iran. And I think I hit the high notes on Bomb Iran somewhere in there. So you have to go check that out. But my friends, that is it from our friends over on X. We're grateful for all the comments on X. We are going to jump over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. And Radicy says, hey, quick, everyone, join Locals and we'll talk about Ben's balls over there. I guess that's what's on deck. It's going to be a wild after party, man. I'm learning a lot today. All right. So from Radicy, thank you for that one. We're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com to dig into our after party. Don't forget to check out robertgovea.com, our website where the PDFs are located, and all of the show reports as well. We've also got, that's it. Before we wrap up, our mods and our meme smiths, thank you guys for keeping the fort tidy, nice and orderly. Our friends Vienticus Prime, K-Bean in the house, Just Cause, Playing Hooky. We got Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Diggers in the house, and Donut Mind Me, all modding down the fort for us. We've got Sleepy Dog Lee, our meme smith, Geegum Geegum, and Nathan N810 over on Locals. And we had one final dono come in from Claudio R. Says, hey, Robert, what happens when the tables turn after Trump wins the election and those persecuting Trump move to Canada? Gosh, I don't know. America returns to normalcy, order, and sanity. That will be good. They can all go to Canada and hang out with Trudeau. And they can share their pronouns with each other at the dinner table or whatever it is they eat. So, my friends, thank you for that. Thank you, Claudio. Thanks for sending that one in. Funny. Yeah, maybe they'll go to Canada. Things will be a little bit better for us here. All right, my friends. Now that is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party. We also have a morning stream tomorrow there. We'd love to have you join us. But if not, well, we are going to be back here tomorrow to get into it all again. And we need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.